My name is not important, but the order slip I used to write my life on still smells like burnt coffee. I was 21 when Dad slid the checkbook out of sight and told me, "You're only good enough for a diner job." That same week, my sister, Sloan, the family's sunrise, received a secret $500,000 transfer for law school. I found out because I reconciled Mom's household account every Sunday after closing, grease on my hands, ledger ink in my nails. At the confrontation, Sloan smirked over a glass of Pinot. Just be practical. As if ambition were a perfume she'd patented and I couldn't afford. So I did the most impractical thing. I saved every receipt. Mom, part-time lifestyle blogger, full-time curator of other people's money. Dad, strategic consultant, allergic to invoices. Sloan, future litigator, fluent in gratitude posts. Me, night shift server at Grand Lake Diner, 2 buses and a walk, tips like chump change. Only Aunt Jo stood different, bookkeeper for a plumbing company, spine like a ruler, who pressed a little black ledger into my palm and said, "Write the numbers. They'll defend you when mouths won't." I wrote, rent splits I covered, car insurance temporary loan, Dad's golf dues bridge payment. The $500,000 transfer labeled educational gift, tucked into a family trust I thought belonged to both sisters. 5 years is a long time to flip pancakes and memorize lies. It's longer when birthday dinners become tribunals where you play the defendant and the caterer. If betrayal has ever silenced you, share your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more. I didn't beg. I learned. The diner taught margins and momentum. Pennies matter, minutes compound, and quiet is a blade if you sharpen it. I left their house that night with a smile Sloan couldn't. Red, and a plan she'd never see coming. I thought their laughter would fade with the door. Instead, it followed me into the cold like a debt I refused to carry. Suspense. I almost swallowed it, until the trust statement landed on my table with my name erased. The trust statement arrived folded once, deliberate. Taylor Family Education. Trust. 2 beneficiaries listed, only 1 funded. Sloan's column glowed with deposits and tuition wires. My column? Zeros, like a mouth refusing to speak. At the bottom. Trustee. Michael Taylor, my father. I traced the signature with a finger that shook, not from shock, but recognition. Of course the pen chose her. The diner became my classroom. Between refills, I learned to read contracts, net 30, liquidated damages, arbitration clauses buried, like landmines. The night manager, Benny, let me close the books. "You're quick," he said, tossing me the key. Aunt Jo tutored me over pie. Debits left, credits right, reconcile or be eaten. Numbers don't love you, she warned, but they will hold you if you hold them first. At 2 a.m., I built a second life. Free community college classes. In accounting. Certificate in fraud examination. A beat-up laptop humming while the neon open sign blinked like a metronome. Every A stung and soothed. The mother in me feeding the daughter they refused. Meanwhile, Sloan posted courtroom selfies in borrowed suits. Dad captioned them. Proud of our future attorney, self-made like store-bought pie. I kept the receipts coming. Gas stipends until you stabilize. A loan for her bar prep apartment. Each time Sloan chirped, "You're the practical one." Practical as in invisible. Practical as in donor. Year 3, I stopped sending. Anything but silence. The night I cut the last temporary transfer, a new email slid in from the trust bank. Request, add successor trustee, Sloan Taylor. Dad was future-proofing the throne. I drove to Aunt Jo's, boots wet, ledger warm in my coat. "You can audit a family," she said quietly. "You just need their signatures. To confess." "How?" I asked. "You start where they think you're weakest," she said, pushing a brochure across the table. A legal clinic. Low cost. High sharpness. I circled the number. Suspense. I was ready to call, until Sloane's face appeared on the diner TV with a headline I couldn't unsee. The local news ran a glossy segment. Rising star, law school grad. Touts grit over privilege. Sloane, chin lifted, said, "I paid my way. I believe in practical ambition." In the corner of the screen, our parents clapped like metronomes. Practical. There it was again. My eulogy repackaged as her brand. Customers turned to watch. Benny whistled. "Hey, isn't that—" "Yep," I said, stacking plates until they rattled. My phone vibrated. Group text. Mom pushing the link. Dad adding heart emojis. Sloane writing, "Some of us make it without handouts." The subtext. Bleed quietly. That night, I met the clinic attorney, Annika, in an office that smelled like toner and burned coffee. Familiar comfort. I slid the documents across. Trust deed, wire proofs, tuition disbursements, my ledger, the video. Link queued and ready. Annika read, eyes narrowing. This isn't just favoritism. It's mismanagement. The trust purpose is education for both daughters. $500,000 to one beneficiary violates the instrument unless there's written consent. Did you consent? I let the silence answer. She tapped the trustee's signature. Your father breached fiduciary duty. If the corpus is depleted and you received nothing, we can pursue surcharge, removal, and restitution. And if he diverted outside, the trust? That's worse. I swallowed. They'll say I'm bitter. Then we let the math speak, she said. Numbers testify well. We filed a petition to compel an accounting. Annika warned me. Families fight dirty when numbers get loud. Dirty came fast. A week later, the diner's owner pulled me aside. HR got a call, he said, face soft. Anonymous complaint that you steal from the register. I laughed, then didn't. Check the tapes. We did. Clean. 3 days after, a credit alert pinged. Someone applied for a continuing education loan in my name. I froze my reports, flagged my file, added fraud to the binder's spine like a new chapter. Dad texted, "You're embarrassing the family." Sloane earned her path. Sloane added, "Be practical. Drop this." I put my phone face down. Suspense. I thought the filings would be the hardest part, until the trustee accounting arrived with a line item I never expected. Private bar prep, cash $75,000. Recipient, unknown. Unknown is a funny word in a family. It was the word they used for my birthdays. Unknown plan, unknown budget, unknown time. It was the word for groceries that appeared with no one's money but mine. Now it sat in a sworn accounting like a stain. $75,000 cash. Bar prep, recipient unknown. Annika pressed a finger to the entry. Cash plus unknown equals someone who doesn't want a trail. We subpoena the prep company, the bank teller logs, any cashier's checks tied to the trust. I nodded, jaw tight. What if it's not Sloane? Then your father paid someone to hold the receipts he never planned to justify, she said. Either way, it comes back. At the diner, I found refuge in repetition. Pour, smile, count, close. A busboy named Mateo started asking questions about budgeting, so after hours I taught him envelopes and percent buckets over free pie. Word spread. Nurses on graveyard shift began bringing pay stubs. Benny offered the back booth. I brought a whiteboard. Wednesday Night Money Club was born under fluorescent lights. We built sinking funds and exit plans, slayed payday loans, mapped debt avalanches. My tips doubled, not from pity, but from gratitude. Somewhere between hash browns and APRs, I became the thing Dad said I wasn't. Useful. The subpoenas landed. The prep company responded first. Sloane's enrollment comped by a family benefactor. The bank logs were juicier. The trustee, Dad, withdrew $75,000 across 3 branches in 1 week. Teller notes read like a chorus. Client says gift for daughter's professional needs. Signature, Michael Taylor. Camera stills attached. Annika exhaled. He dug his own hole. At home, I flipped open the ledger and wrote, in clean block, letters, $500,000, $75,000, $575,000. Under it, me, 0, I didn't cry. I scheduled. Hearing date, 9:00 a.m., Friday. I pressed my uniform, wrote my testimony, kissed the top of Aunt Jo's head when she brought over casseroles like armor. Suspense. I almost slept, until a new envelope slid under my door with a threat. I could not ignore. Drop the case or the diner burns. The note stank of cheap ink and fear. I called the non-emergency line, filed a report, and installed cameras that night while Benny changed the backdoor deadbolt twice. We started closing earlier, lights off faster, laughter lower. Fear tried to move into booth 3. I refused it. Service. Annika added the threat to our exhibits. Intimidation strengthens your case, she said. It shows consciousness of guilt. Aunt Jo added, it also shows they're scared of your math. We all smiled without humor. On hearing morning, the courthouse smelled like dust and power. Dad arrived in a suit too proud, Mom in pearls that clicked like counting beads, Sloan in a dress that said special feature. They didn't look at me. They looked at the gallery. The judge, a woman with canyon eyes, called the matter. Annika stood, small but seismic. We walked the court through the instrument. 2 beneficiaries, equal opportunity, fiduciary duty to both. We laid the statements, on the doc cam like bones, transfer dates, tuition wires, cash withdrawals. The bar prep comp. The unknown. Dad's attorney tried to perform. Our client exercised trustee discretion. The younger daughter lacked academic direction. Translation. Diner girl didn't deserve it. Annika's voice sharpened. Discretion is not licensed to erase. Then came Sloane's affidavit, pages of polished struggle, the myth of self-funding in perfect paragraphs. The judge read silently, then lifted her eyes. Ms. Taylor, your affidavit claims you paid your way. You all... The bailiff returned with a slim envelope marked, Bank, Confidential. The judge slid a letter opener under the flap and read, Face steady. When she looked up, her voice cooled the room. Trustee Taylor, the bank's internal audit indicates additional withdrawals from the trust to a shell LLC, titled Practical Ambition, LLC, managing member Sloan Taylor. Total, $118,400. Sloan blinked. That's my content brand, she whispered, too loud. Annika didn't smile. Education. Trust funds aren't for influencer equipment. Dad's attorney sputtered, but the judge raised a palm. Enough. She ruled. Removal of my father as trustee. Appointment of a neutral fiduciary. Full surcharge. Restitution to the trust of $575,000, plus the $118,400 siphoned through the LLC. Legal fees payable from my father personally, and referral for investigation into potential civil fraud. This court will not permit a fiduciary to convert duty into dynasty. I didn't breathe until the gavel kissed wood. Mom's pearls stilled. Dad stared at the floor as if the grain could change shape. Sloane's features twisted, searching for a camera that could fix this angle. Outside, Aunt Jo squeezed my hand. Numbers may not love you, she murmured, but today they stood up. That night, the diner felt holy. Mateo brought cupcakes. The nurse crew clapped. Benny hung a paper banner. Ledger girl wins. We laughed like people who know the price of laughter. Then fire scratched the night. The alley camera caught a hooded figure with a lighter, a shadow bent on turning fear into flame. The accelerant, sizzled against the back door, didn't catch. Benny's new metal threshold shrugged off the spark. The figure ran. Sirens painted the bricks blue. I sent the footage to the detective and to Annika. Evidence multiplied. My terror didn't. Suspense. I thought survival was the win. Until the new trustee's first act landed in my inbox. Notice of sale. Family home to restore trust corpus. Sale looked neat in the subject line. Clinical as a diagnosis. The trust's new fiduciary had one job: refill the well I'd never tasted. The house was an asset. Assets move when math demands it. I didn't gloat. I brewed coffee and read every line twice. Mom called first, voice raw. You wouldn't do this to us. I didn't, I said quietly. Dad did when he chose one, daughter over another. Dad texted, "You'll regret this when you're alone." I muted him and forwarded the text to the detective. At the diner, Wednesday night money club swelled. We rerouted paychecks, set up emergency funds, printed checklists, fireproof box, freezes, fraud alerts, photocopy IDs. The booth buzzed with people learning to survive the way I had, slow, stubborn, together. I visited the house alone this evening before the auction. The brass numbers glinted like they knew me. My palm remembered every Saturday I spent mulching that yard while Sloane studied. The front door stuck, same as always. Inside, the air smelled like lemon cleaner. And denial. I left a single thing on the kitchen island. A photocopy of my ledger's first page with a sticky note. Numbers remember. Auction day drew the curious and the cruel. Neighbors came to whisper, investors came to hunt. Dad stood on the lawn trying to look taller. Mom wore a scarf like armor. Sloane hid behind sunglasses, phone in hand, brand bleeding, followers. The auctioneer's cadence cut the air. Bids climbing, hopes shrinking. When the gavel fell, the price was clean enough to cover the trust surcharge with fees to spare. Sloane's glasses slid. Mom's scarf wilted. Dad finally looked small. The new owner signed papers on the hood of a truck. He smiled at me. I recognized him. Benny's cousin, a contractor who came to Wednesday nights for budgeting help. He nodded once, respectful, then turned to the house that would feed his kids instead of my family's pride. Suspense. I thought that was the end. Until Sloane stepped toward me with an envelope that changed the temperature of my bones. Sloane's envelope shook in her. Hands, not a demand, not a threat. A cashier's check, ink dark and heavy. $50,000. First payment, she whispered, eyes rimmed pink. Restitution plan. The trustee says... Her voice cracked. It's court-ordered, but... I wrote the memo to you. I took the check like a relic I hadn't prayed for. The memo line read, "For the sister who kept the ledger." Behind her, Dad argued with a man about boxes. Mom clutched a porcelain bowl like it held a future. Their faces looked carved out, absent of audience. No cameras, no captions, just people who built a tower from a daughter's back and watched it crumble on a weekday. I didn't gloat. I remembered the girl who counted tips under neon and believed numbers would hold her when mouths didn't. She had been right. If betrayal has ever silenced you, share your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more. 5 years after Be Practical, I am, just not the way they meant. I still work at the diner 3 nights a week because I love the noise of honest work. By day, I'm a certified fraud examiner on contract with the clinic that took my first appointment. Wednesday night, Money Club has a waiting list and a donation jar. Sloane's check will triple. Aunt Jo sits at the corner booth on launch nights, smiling at nothing and everything. Sloane texts sometimes. Not for money, never again, but for forms. She doesn't understand encourage. She's learning to borrow from herself. She is paying it back, slowly, the way we rebuild anything that matters. As for Dad, he's learning a new definition of practical. What you build must balance. I lock the diner late and step into a night that doesn't taste like debt anymore. Have you ever forgiven someone who didn't deserve it? Tell me below, and subscribe for more true tales. The numbers spoke. I listened.